Get a muzzle. All right, so today I'm going to talk a little more about numbers and getting data from the user. What method in Ruby allowed me to get information from the user? Gets, okay? And that was short for get string. So any data that we get from the user is always a string, right? So let's say I want to ask the user for how much their bill was. Say we're going to create a little tip calculator, all right? Not a Tim calculator, a tip calculator. I actually wrote one of these for my iPhone, and it's called Tip Roulette, and you spin a roulette wheel, and it comes up with a number, and the server gets between 0 and 36%. And anyway. Yeah, they love the 36%, not so much on the 0. So, but it averages out about 18, so that's okay. But anyway, I did that for a local radio station for fun. So when we're asking data from the user, what's the first thing we really need to do? Put a print. We need to prompt them for something. We call that prompting. So let's print, please enter the total amount of your bill. Gotta type. And then we can get the data from the user, right? So how do we get data from the user? Through the gets method, right? Gets. And then we have to put that somewhere. Okay, so we give it a variable. So we'll call it total, let's call it bill amount. And we're going to get something and put it into the bill amount. And then for now, let's just print out what we got. Let's print out the bill amount after they type it in. And let's run this and see what we got. And remember, I like to run programs. That's interesting. There we go. A little at a time. You write the program a little at a time. You don't write 400 lines of code and then run it for the first time and figure out where the bug is. I write a little bit at a time. I make sure I'm getting the right input. I write a little more. I test it some more. I write a little more. I test it some more. A line or two at a time. That's how I write code. That's how you should write code. It finds the errors faster. So let's see, I already ran that, didn't I? Let's quit this one. Yes. All right, so we can enter a number. My total bill was $18.45. Okay? So I hit enter, and I get $18.45. So that looks like it's working, right? What's wrong with that? It's a string, right? There is no way for me to type in my keyboard anything but a string. No matter what I type on my keyboard, the computer always thinks of it as a string. In any language, that's what it thinks of it as. It's actually an ASCII character for the numbers 1, 8, period, 4, and a 5. That doesn't mean anything to the computer until I tell it that it means something to the computer. So I need to tell the computer what I really am asking for is a number. Okay? So I need to convert that string into a number that I can do some multiplication on. Now, Ruby has two main types of numbers, just like most languages. They have an integer, which is everything without a decimal point, and a floating point value, which is anything with a decimal point. Okay, that's the two different classes of numbers that Ruby has, basically. So I want to get a string, and this is a method that returns a string, so I can do stringy stuff with it. So what method could I use to convert a string into a number? .toF, okay? If I want to convert it to a floating point, I would call the toF method. If I want to convert it to an integer, I would call it toI. Let's do the toI and see what happens when I run this. So if I say enter 1845 and I convert it to an integer, I get back 18. Why 18? It just truncates the decimal, right? The program, the method that says 2i, starts reading from the 1 and says, okay, that's a valid number. Then it reads the next number, which is an 8. That's a valid number. That looks pretty good. Then it reads the next symbol, which is a period. It says, okay, I can't convert that to a number. So it stops looking at that point and gives it what it had up to that point. Okay? So if I ran it like this, if I entered a number 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, whatever, what number do you think will come back? 1, 2, 3. It gets the number up to the point where it can convert a number. Okay, everything else is not a number, so it stops. So I get a 123. So if I want to convert it to a floating point, I have to use the 2f method. And this runs the same way. It looks for a number. And what if I put in this? What do you think is going to come back? Okay, an error or nothing. It actually comes back with 0 because it couldn't find a number, so the default is, in the first character it looked at was an A, right? It said, that's not a number I can convert, so it says, okay, I'm done. It doesn't even continue on. It stops, and the default is to give you a 0 back. And it's a floating point number, so it's 0.0. All right? So if I ran this again and put in an actual number, 18.555, I'm going to get back a floating point number up to the point where it could convert the numbers. Now, do I have to worry about the carriage return when I'm converting to a float or an integer? Why is that? It only applies. Well, if we think about what the 2i method actually is doing, it's reading numbers up to the point where it stops finding a number, right? So it reads the number 1811555, and then it sees a carriage return character. It says that's not a number, so I quit. So it basically at the same time it's stripping off the carriage return and giving me the number at the same time. So in effect, it's doing exactly what I want. Does that make sense? All right. So I've got a floating point number. Now I can do floating point type stuff to it. Let's ask them for the tip amount. Okay, how much do I want to tip them? So I say, what percentage tip do you want? And then I need to get that value and put it into a variable. What type of variable do you think I should store it in? Probably a what? A float? Okay, good. So we'll put it tip, we'll call it, and we'll say assign to that variable whatever I get from my gets, and that's going to be from the keyboard. But what do I want to convert it to? 2f again, right? So I want to convert it to a float. So now we'll print them out both just so I can see that I get a value. All right, so I'm asking them for the amount of their bill, I'm getting the amount of their bill. I'm asking them for their percentage, I'm getting the percentage. Now I have two values, two variables that I can play and do some math with. So let's run it. Again, let's just make sure everything's working right. 1844 percentage, I want to give a 20% tip. And so I get a 20.0 and an 18.44. Okay, yep. Why? Right. Okay, so he makes a good point. I'm putting in a percentage. So the question you ask the user will change what answer you're going to get back from them, right? If I'm asking them for a percentage, do I want them to type 20 as a percent, 20%? Or do I want them to type and do the math in their head and type 0.2? So do you see that the difference there? I'm making the user come up with the 0.2 is the same as 20%. Everybody know that, first of all? I know that's, I don't know what that, third grade math maybe. Right? 20% is 0.2, maybe fourth grade. So it's all in how you want the program to work. Okay, you either do the math for them or you make them do the math and input the right number to start with. So what do you want to do? Let's put, oh, we're going to do ifs already. No, let's do this whole number. All right, we'll ask them for a whole number, and we will do the math. All right? So then what is the math to figure out the tip on a bill amount here? What does the math look like? Let's just figure that out before I write it all out. So it's going to be bill amount times whatever they put in as their percentage, tip, divided by 100. That's assuming they're putting in a whole number percentage, right? Now, does that look right there? Do I? Who says I need parentheses? Yeah, I need a way to put it out, but just in terms of the math right now. Who thinks I need parentheses? To come out with the right value. All right, so here we come back to number precedence. In computers, the multiplication and the division have the same precedence. That means then that the calculation is done from left to right. So bill amount times tip divided by 100 is actually the same as bill amount times parentheses tip divided by 100. It actually comes out to be the same thing. However, for clarity's sake, I would put parentheses in no matter what. I think it makes more sense that I want to convert it into a percentage first and then multiply it by my bill amount. It reads better in my code. Yeah, question? Yeah.
Just go with gets 2f times 0.01. Solve that and then divide by.
Sure, absolutely. I could do that math up here instead. He's asking, can I do that here? I could multiply that because what is the value after I convert it to a float? What does this represent? A number, so I can start doing math on it right now. I could do times 0.01, which it would have to be 0.01, or Ruby doesn't understand that. You have to start a floating point with a number dot something, or I could divide by 100, right? Same thing. Those actually are identical statements. So I could do it there and then not do it down here. So that's up to you. You like it this way better? Okay, so the tip now has a floating point value which is already divided, so I don't need to do this 100 down here. So let's just print that out. Print or puts your tip will be, and it's easier to do this with these little special symbols. What is that called? It's called interpolation in Ruby. Okay, it's a nice computer science-y term to say interpret this stuff and convert it to a string for me automatically. So I can put the calculation right here. Bill amount times tip. All right? So that's the value. That's going to be calculated first, converted to a string, and then the puts will print it out to the screen. So if I have, let's do something that's easier to calculate. $20 bill, and I want to give a 20% tip. So that should come out to be what? $4. Okay, good. Look at that, $4. Isn't that great? Did it all for me. And this is the original bill, and this is the percentage after it did the division for me. All right, see how easy that is? Now, your assignment on Wednesday is this payroll. You're going to ask for 5 or 6 things from the user, and do several different math calculations to print out a report. But essentially, it's the same thing that we've done here. It's just going to be a couple more lines of code. Any questions on this? Now's your time to ask. Good time to ask. Yes?
Whenever you use the guess method, why is it that, is there any real reason to put down the proof method along with it if you still see what you're typing in the field?
Okay, so if I don't put a prompt here and I run this code, so the question was, for those on the recording, is there any reason to print out, because you're going to see this gets here anyway, right? If I don't prompt them for something, the keyboard just sits there and waiting for input.
Well, I was meaning like...
That's not what you're asking.
Putting out your... what you just...
Oh, this here?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Printing out what I got?
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason to do that. I did that for debugging purposes as I'm writing the code. I'm just making sure that what I got back out was what I put in. Okay, so it's a good interim debugging step. It's not necessary at all. And in your final program, I wouldn't do this at all. I mean, this doesn't make sense. It's only for my own purposes that I want to see the value as I'm working through the code. Does that make sense? Yeah.
How did you make it display? Your tip will be part.
This part?
Yeah, I cannot see that very well.
Is that bigger? Is that better?
Curly braces. What braces is that?
Curly braces, right. So this means anything inside of a sharp curly brace set is going to be evaluated. I can do anything I want in here. This is the same thing as if I did this. Your tip will be, and then I have to put the value of that expression, right? I'd have to say bill amount times tip. But that's a number. I can't add a number to a string. So I'd have to take this value and convert it to a string so I could print it out to the screen. So it's a little bit more work to do it that way. So that shortcut is just nicer. So 20 and a 20% tip. So they come out to be the same. That code, those two lines are identical, but this one is a little easier, I think, to understand. Personal preference. All right. Yeah, maybe. All right, any other questions on that? Yes?
If you do the, you get, sometimes you get weird decimals. How do you cut that off so it's only 2 decimal points?
I was expecting that question. All right, so the point is, let's say we run this again, and we have some weird numbers like 18.33, and we give them a 17% tip, and tip is going to be 3.1161. Well, it's hard to divide a penny up unless you have some bolt cutters, right? It's a little tough to do that. So what he's asking is, how do we make that, round it to a number that's only 3.11 or 3.12, right? So that gets a little more complicated. And to only print out 2 decimals gets a little more complicated. So I'll show it to you. If you go to the Ruby documentation, ruby-lang.org, and we go to the documentation and scroll down to the Ruby core reference, and I want to look for the value sprintf. See if that'll find it. Sprintf. Let's see if we can find it. It's not going to be an easy one to find. There's a better way to do this. Let's see. Let me find it. Okay, so it's in the kernel class, kernel, which is the base where a lot of the built-in methods are, and we want to scroll down to sprintf, 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 and this is a way that we can take a number and convert it into anything we want with precisions and decimal points, and gives us full control over how we want to have this number come out. The problem is this is a little bit of a complicated method to understand. It actually comes from the root language C. This is a built-in method in C that they just copied over completely. So it's a C method, and it has lots of things we can do with it. We give it, it takes two arguments. It takes a format string and then arguments that relate to that format string. So the arguments are the number that we want to convert, like the final tip calculation. And the format string is how do we want that number to be formatted? How do we want it to look? And there are a bunch of different ways to do that with, we can convert to binary, we can convert to hexadecimal, all kinds of different things. No, there's not a built-in convert to money. There is in Rails because this is such a common thing, but not in the Ruby language itself. So we want to convert, and I'll just give you the string because you'll use this a lot. If I want to convert, let's see, let's just do it in, wow, my voice is going. Let's do it in IRB. Remember IRB, interactive Ruby, I can do simple stuff like this. I can say sprintf, and the format string is %2f. All right? And we'll talk about that in a second. And I can give it a number like 3.33333. All right? So what that... it's not right. It's... not 2F, it's, see, I have to remember this myself. It's %.2F, okay? So what this says is, this percent says what's following is a format string, and I want to convert this as if it was a floating point number. So I want 2 digits of precision after the decimal point is what that means. And I want that to be a floating point number. That's what the F is. Two digits of precision, 2 digits of floating point precision after the decimal point. Okay? So I can actually put the $ in here as well in the string if I want, and say I want a $ to precede that, %.2f, and it will put the $ for me. All right, so that's a nice way to do it. Let's copy this up here to my code. And lots of ways I can do that. I can create a whole new variable called tip amount. And I want to convert the value. Now, what would I put in here? Okay, right. The bill amount times tip. I'm going to come up with the tip amount, multiply those together. That will come up with a decimal number, a floating point number. It'll run it through this format string and give me what back? What type of variable now is this? No. Okay, so let's go back and look at the documentation. What does sprintf return? String, okay? So it gives me back a string already. So that's all I need is I can just put that tip amount straight in here. or in this case, it's already a string. I can add it like this. So there's two ways to do that. So let's run it again. Not my RAB console. Run my floating point. So I enter 20 and 20, and I get $4 back, 4.00. If I do my weird thing like 33.33 and 27%, I get $9. That's interesting. And 17%. I get 5.67. So it's doing all the conversion, and that dollar sign is coming from what method now? Right. The sprintf is doing that. It's adding the dollar sign for me inside of this format string. If I didn't do that and ran it again, then I don't get the dollar sign back out.
If you do it without this sprintf, just put a .toString, it works.
Which one?
You take the sprintf off out of there, delete that, and just put toString at the end. It works.
ToString at the end of this. That's weird. Like that. I don't think so. I don't think so. You can. There is a shortcut like this. I believe it's an and, but I didn't really want to get into that one. Let's see if that works. Yeah, nope. It's this is a shortcut you might find online if you did a search. That does a 2% thing, but I don't want to do that. So let's go back to where I was. Out of scope of class. There we go. Let's stick with that. sprintf. This will do the conversion for me to 2 decimal points.
Are you going to mark it wrong if I did the other one?
No, as long as it comes out right, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. If you search online, you can. What would I search for in Google to try to solve that problem? What's the first word I should use when I'm searching? Ruby. Okay, Ruby. Convert floating point to currency. Now, the problem is with this, you'll get a lot of Rails stuff. So here's one that tries to do it, but it doesn't do it exactly. They even talk about a gem. There's a money gem. I do not want you to use that.
What's a gem?
A gem is a library of code that you can. This is the one down here. It's the %. Is that what you did? This %. Gem is a library of code that you can include in your program to give you additional functionality without having to write it, which is like what ASP is or C#. You don't have to write any code in there. Just bashing it, yeah. This is using a mod symbol. I came in through the ASP? No, I didn't. No, I learned real programming first. So anyway, that's a good way to search. There's lots of ways to do that, but that's what we have. I think that's the easiest to understand. All right, any questions on this?
Can we take it one step further? How do you add that extra zero when it's missing?
Well, that's what this does. This way does add the extra zero. See, it came out with 4.0. If I ran it again, it actually came out right. 20 and 20, I got 4.00. So your way is not quite right to get that, right? Yeah, so. All right, any other questions?
That wasn't part of the assignment
No, that wasn't. If you guys end up without doing this and have 4.0, that's fine. I'm not going to count that wrong. This is just to make it a nicer way to go. All right, good enough.